This is when the experience of truth can register with you, because you have provided the condition under which, for lack of better words, the transfer of knowledge can occur. Without this awareness, you have not met its conditions. And until you do, you will not know that it is yours already. Now, Paul can tell you that when he has this experience, he's not yet realizing that he's always had it, and he had it already before each time he chooses to set aside his independent right to be reactive or self-righteous and joins with me. You, all of you, have made many ideas which you have placed between yourselves and your Creator. And I would add, between yourselves and your Creator's creations. These are the mutual definitions that you've all made up and agreed to validate and stand by and reinforce if you have to die to do it. Even if you have to die to do it. You have made many ideas which you have placed between yourselves and your Creator, and these beliefs are the world as you perceive it. That sentence, if it were made into a work of art, would be a large frame in which there was printing that said, "You have made many ideas which you have placed between yourselves and your Creator, and these beliefs are," and the rest of the printing would be in flashing neon tubing, "the world as you perceive it." Right now, right here in this room, right here where any of you are, right there where any of you are, you're seeing your definitions. You're seeing what you have been trained to see. You're seeing what you've been talked into seeing. And so you're seeing what you've been educated to see and not what is really there. And heaven help you if any of you have a slightly different perception of everything, because if you say it out loud, you're likely to be carted off to the loony bin. And certainly if you're a child who hasn't yet been totally trained as to how you're supposed to see, you will be talked out of what you're seeing. You will be corrected. No, those flowers aren't shimmering, Johnny. No, you can't really see through the railing. You're misunderstanding what you're seeing. You see? Now this is important. Truth is not absent here, meaning here in the world. Truth is not absent here, but it is obscure. Like I've said, you're only ever confronted with reality. The only thing confronting you is reality. The only thing confronting you is the kingdom of heaven. But because you're choosing to validate the definitions you've applied to reality, you call it a physical universe that came from a big bang. What you might call a confluence of physical forces that had a universal effect because it was so powerful. Truth is not absent here. Reality is what's confronting you, but it is obscure. You do not know the difference between what you have made, the definitions you've applied to everything, and which you use in order not to see what's really there, and what God created, which is the only thing that is there. And so you do not know the difference between what you have made and what you have created. Again, what you have created have been voluntary or involuntary expressions of love. Voluntary or involuntary embodiments of truth. Embodiments of life that wiped out a cancer, or the measles, or the chicken pox, or the whooping cough. When you experienced healing, those embodiments of truth and life and love remain eternally. But you do not know the difference between what you have made and what you have created. To believe that you can perceive the real world is to believe that you can know yourself. But you know what? There are many who don't even know there is a real world to experience right here. They think the world is exactly what they've been taught it is. And so there's no occasion for them to try to see beyond it, to try to free themselves from the bondage of it. But to those of you who are aware that there's another way to look at this, who will dare to believe that you can perceive the real world, you will discover means that you are willing to believe that you can know yourself, because they will go hand in hand. You can know God. What does that mean? It means that when you have the moment of intimacy with the flower and you become undefended against its communication of its divine meaning to you, because that's its purpose, is to express, to communicate its divinity, its meaning. That experience of its meaning is the equivalent of knowing God. It is the experience of knowing God. And in the acknowledgement of it, you are then glorifying God. You can know God because it is His will to be known. It's the will of everything God has created, everything that God is being, to be known. It is your purpose to be known for what you are. It is the flower's purpose to be known for what it is. And the unobstructed experience of knowing the meaning of everything is best described as communion. And it's an infinite knowing, because no part of the infinity of creation is obscured from you. It's a large experience. Now, the real world is all that the Holy Spirit has saved for you out of what you have made. Again, what you have made up. And to perceive only this is salvation, because it is the recognition that reality is only what is true. That's why you stop often during the day, or should, to say, Holy Spirit, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of that? So that what is true about it can be conveyed to you, because you truly are interested in experiencing what is true. And for that moment, you're willing to abandon what you believe is true, so that you might become free of the entanglement of the state of confusion that a mind that cannot tell the difference between what is real and what isn't real is subject to. Don't laugh. This is a very simple course. Perhaps you do not feel that a course which, in the end, teaches nothing more than that only reality is true is necessary. That is what it teaches. Only reality is true. Why does it teach it? So that you will be curious to experience it. So that you will invite the experience of it in. So that you will abandon your habit of trudging along repeating the old paradigms. This is a very simple course. Perhaps you do not feel that a course which, in the end, teaches nothing more than that only reality is true is necessary. But do you believe it? That's the question. Do you believe that only reality is true? If you believed that only reality was true and that you weren't experiencing it yet, if you believed that only reality was true, why, you would be busy every day doing what is essential to letting it in. Now, we're talking in a larger picture here about reality universally. But we can apply this to the reality of specific things, like a brother or a sister who is in a state of fear, listening to the voice for fear, and acting out their fear, which is a call for love. What do? You come back to the point of remembering that only reality is true, and that at the moment you're not seeing it, and therefore you really do want to see it, so that you shift your own use of your mind into an abandonment of the pleasure or fascination with conflict, and you move from that into a devotion to peace, singularity, where the purity of love and life can register with you so that you're not confused, so that you can tell the difference between what is real and what is unreal. And in that clarity, automatically abandon any devotion whatsoever to what is unreal, and thus move into a state of singular mindedness. Only reality is true, but do you believe it? When you have perceived the real world, you will recognize that you did not believe it. Yet the swiftness with which your new and only real perception will be translated into knowledge will leave you only an instant to realize that this judgment is true. In other words, when you have the experience that only the real is true, when you have the experience of God in a thing, you will realize that your experience of it had been an interpretation, and the interpretation wasn't true. And that realization will only last a moment, because you will be consumed with and interested only in having the experience of what is true. And then everything you made up, will be forgotten. The good and bad, the good stuff you made up, as well as the bad stuff, the false and the true, it will be forgotten. For as heaven and earth become one, even the real world will vanish from your sight. The believers in, quote, the world doesn't exist, unquote, love that statement. They say, it says right in the Course, even the real world will vanish from your sight. It's simple. As you wake up, as you move through this awakening process, as enlightenment registers with you, you will begin to learn that the world as you've been seeing it is not the way the world really is. And there is a world that really is, that is available for you to see. And so it would seem that there are two things going on, when there's really only one thing going on, called a real world, that is being misperceived. And the misperception seems to suggest a second world. So, we talk then about a real world and an unreal world. The unreal one is made up of all the definitions you've applied to the real world. You see, like pin the tail on the donkey. If you have the donkey on the wall and you pin a peacock's tail to it, you could call it a pea mule or a pea donkey. Does that mean there's such a thing as a pea donkey? No. But you could become committed to that idea, and you could draw pictures and paintings of pea donkeys. And everybody could become familiar with a pea donkey. And everybody could say, yes, yes, There are pedunkies. We've never seen one. We heard that there were some sightings up in the northwest. And we've found some strange tail feathers where you wouldn't expect to find them. But no, we've never seen a pedunky, but they do exist. And we found some strange footprints that probably could only have been made by a pedunky. And we can tell that it probably weighs about 250 pounds. And blah, blah, blah. So we talk as though there's a real world and an unreal world. When you abandon your commitment to your definitions and your beliefs, so there is an innocent mind that's unguarded, reality can register with you. And as it registers with you and causes you to become aware that the world you have been seeing hasn't been real, you're in a position of shifting your allegiance from the unreal world to the real world. The moment you shift your allegiance to the real world, which is your experience of reality, the unreal disappears. And you could say that you're momentarily left with the illusion that you're in the real world that was in contrast to the unreal world. But the moment that full, unguarded embrace of the real world happens, it ceases to be the real world. And you are experiencing heaven. Now, as heaven and earth become one, even the real world will vanish from your sight. The end of the world is not its destruction, but its translation into heaven. The reinterpretation of the world is the transfer of all perception to knowledge, which I've referred to in the past as knowing with a capital K. It is the experience of truth that could be called knowing or knowledge that hasn't been arrived at through intellectual processes, that hasn't been arrived at through reasoning, that hasn't been arrived at through discussion and mutual agreement. It's something that is before you could have a single thought about it. The reinterpretation of the world is the transfer of all perception to knowledge. The Bible tells you to become as little children. See, remember that we're backing off from the human condition that we've been discussing for the last few weeks. We're backing off from that in order to consider the use you as a possible agent for change need to bring into play in order to truly be an agent for change. So we're abandoning the ones calling for help in order to get our mind into that place of clarity where you can extend the awareness of truth that has arisen out of an experience of what it is. The Bible tells you to become as little children. Little children recognize that they do not understand what they perceive, and so they ask what it means. Do not make the mistake of believing that you understand what you perceive, for its meaning is lost to you. You look at the flower and you say, I perceive a flower. But I'm telling you, you don't perceive its meaning. You don't see God there. And if you're not seeing God there, you're seeing a perception, a misperception. You're seeing a nothingness which you are devoted to the exclusion of the experience of what it really is. Do not make the mistake of believing that you understand what you perceive, for its meaning is lost to you. Yet, the Holy Spirit, that which is nothing more than your right mind, it's not something far off and very different, radically different from you. It's the very core of you. It's the very essential being of you. Yet the Holy Spirit has saved its meaning for you. And if you will let Him interpret it for you, He will restore what you have thrown away. As long as you think you know its meaning, you will see no need to ask it of Him. You do not know the meaning of anything you perceive. Not one thought you hold is wholly true. The recognition of this is your firm beginning. So when you are confronted with a brother or a situation that calls for correction or that is a call for love, you must be careful not to suddenly jump into the fray thinking you have the answer without first acknowledging that you don't have the answer. And because at the moment you're not seeing it with the Holy Spirit or with me, that you are not in a position of responding constructively. And so you back off and ask, what is the meaning here? What am I to be here? Without bringing into your question a dance of all the little concepts that you have stored up for such an emergency, to be used in an emergency, and trying to fit them into the answer that the Holy Spirit will give you. You really need to want to go into this place of asking, this place of inquiry about what truth is, with total innocence. You are not misguided. You have accepted no guide at all. Now, if you were misguided, then you could be guilty. You could feel shame. You could feel guilt. But you're not misguided. You simply have accepted no guide at all. So that knowledge means that it's very easy for you to say, Holy Spirit, guide me here. Father, guide me here. Jesus, guide me here. I will yield to your help. I will yield to your guidance. I will yield to the revelation of clarity that you hold in trust for me, that you have been holding in trust for me until I got tired of doing everything by myself.